Welcome to Math with Mr. J. In this video, I'm going to cover how to find the area of rectangles, squares, triangles, and circles. Now remember, area is the amount of surface something covers, a shape covers. We're going to start with rectangles, move to squares, then triangles, and end with circles. Let's jump into rectangles. Starting with number 1, where we need to find the area of the rectangle. For finding the area of a rectangle, we can use the formula area equals length times width. I used a cursive L for length so it doesn't look like a 1. Not a huge deal though either way, as long as you know it's an L when you write out the formula. Now all we need to do is plug in the length and width and then multiply. I'm going to use the longer side for the length, so 6 meters, and then 3 meters for the width. So area equals 6 meters times 3 meters. And now we can multiply. 6 times 3 gives us an area of 18 square meters. We measure area in square units, so this is square meters. Before we move on to number 2, let's take a look at why we do length times width and look at a visual of area. We have 6 meters by 3 meters, so let's draw these out, starting with 6 meters. So I'm going to mark each meter here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we have 6 meters there. And now we can do the width. So 3 meters. 1, 2, and 3. You'll notice that we have squares now. These are square units. And specifically for number 1, those are square meters. That just means that each square is 1 meter by 1 meter. And this is a square meter. When we find area, we find how many square units something covers. So for number 1, how many square meters does this rectangle cover? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, which is exactly the same thing we got by doing length times width. So by drawing all of that out, this helps us visualize area and square units, but it's much quicker just to do length times width. Let's move on to number 2, and for this one, we're just going to use the formula. So area equals length times width. So let's plug in the length. We're going to use 19 feet. So 19 feet times the width of 5 feet. So again, I used the longer side for the length. Now for number 2, it's a little different than number 1 because all 4 side lengths are written out. That doesn't mean we need all 4 side lengths. We still just need the length and width. We're not multiplying everything that's written out or given. So something to keep in mind. Now we can multiply. So 19 times 5 gives us an area of 95 square feet. So there's how to find the area of a rectangle. Let's move on to finding the area of a square. Now we're going to take a look at how to find the area of a square. Let's jump into our examples, starting with number 1, where we need to find the area of that square. Now for squares, we can find the area by squaring a side length. So we can use the formula area equals a side length squared. And for this square, each side is 8 inches. So let's plug in 8 inches here for our side length. So 8 squared. 8 squared means 8 times 8, which gives us an area of 64 square inches. Let's move on to number 2, where we have a square with sides that are 11 meters. And you'll notice that we only have one side labeled. That's because this is a square and we know all of the sides are going to be the same. They're all going to be 11 meters. The tick marks on each side of this square show us that they are all the same. We have one tick mark on each side, and that indicates that, again, all of the sides are the same. Then we have the 90-degree angles marked as well. I wanted to include these symbols in case you come across them. That way, you'll know what they mean. As far as area, let's use the formula area equals a side length squared. And each side is 11 meters. So let's plug in 11 meters for the side length. So 11 squared, that means 11 times 11. That gives us an area of 121 square meters. So there's how to find the area of a square. Let's move on to finding the area of a triangle. Now let's take a look at finding the area of a triangle. We can either use the formula base times height divided by 2 or 1/2 times base times height. Dividing by 2 and multiplying by 1/2 are the same thing. They're going to give us the same result. So either formula will work and give us the correct area. Think about it. If we want to take half of something, we can either divide by 2 or multiply by 1/2. We will talk about why taking half of something relates to the area of a triangle in a little bit. Now for this video, I'm going to use the formula base times height divided by 2. But again, either formula will work and they both mean the same thing. We are taking half of the base times the height. Let's jump into number 1, where we have a triangle with a base of 8 feet and a corresponding height of 6 feet. We do not need this 10 feet right here in order to calculate the area. We have area equals base times height divided by 2. Let's plug in the base and the height. The base is 8 feet, so we have 8 feet times the corresponding height of 6 feet, so 8 times 6 divided by 2. Now we can work through this. 8 times 6 gives us 48, and we have 48 divided by 2 here. 48 divided by 2 gives us an area of 24 square feet. So our final area for this triangle, again, 24 square feet. Now, as far as why we take half of the base times height, either by dividing by 2 or multiplying by 1/2, let's take a look right here. Now we have the same triangle, base of 8 feet, height of 6 feet, but the triangle is doubled, so we have 2 of them, and we can fit them together to create a rectangle. So we have 1 triangle, 2 triangles, and since they are right triangles, they can fit together to create a rectangle. Now, if we aren't working with a right triangle, the triangles can still fit together to create a parallelogram. So this will still apply. We can use the formula base times height to find the area of a parallelogram. And if we are working with a rectangle, we may also hear length times width. So for the area of this parallelogram, specifically a rectangle, we have base times height. Let's write it over here. We have area equals base times height. Area equals, well, the base, we have 8 feet, times the height of 6 feet. 8 times 6 gives us an area of 48 square feet. And that's the area of the rectangle. Now we can see that the triangle is exactly half of the rectangle. So we can take half of the area of the rectangle to get the area of the triangle. So that's why we take half, either by dividing by 2 or multiplying by 1/2. Let's move on to number 2, where we have a triangle with a base of 9 meters and a corresponding height of 4 meters. So let's write our formula here. So area equals base times height divided by 2. Now we can plug in. The base is 9 meters times the height of 4 meters divided by 2. 9 times 4 gives us 36. So we end up with 36 divided by 2, which gives us an area of 18 square meters. Now, just to show again why we take half, I'm going to double this triangle. So let's make a copy of this triangle to create a parallelogram. So we have the copy of the triangle right here. It's not the best, but we have a parallelogram right here. So we have the base of 9 times the height of 4. That gives us an area of 36 square meters for that parallelogram. And then we take half to find the area of the triangle. Let's move on to number 3, where we have a triangle with a base of 5 yards and a corresponding height of 11 yards. Now, this one looks a little confusing as far as how it's drawn out, but we are finding the area of this triangle right here. The dashed parts off to the side are to show the base being extended out. So we have the base right here, and then this part extends out, and we have the height going up from that extension. So the dashed parts are to show the height. So don't let it confuse you. Now we can calculate the area of this triangle. So we have area equals base times height divided by 2. Let's plug in the base and the height. So the base is 5 yards times the height of 11 yards divided by 2. Let's work through this now. 5 times 11 is 55 divided by 2. That gives us an area of 27 and a half, or 27 and 5/10. And this is square yards. So final area, 27 and a half square yards. Let's make a copy of this triangle as well to show the parallelogram that we took half of. So this is the copy of the triangle, and our parallelogram is right here. This parallelogram has a base of 5 yards and a height of 11 yards. 5 times 11 gives us 55. So that parallelogram has an area of 55 square yards. We took half of that in order to find the area of the triangle. So there's how to find the area of a triangle. Let's move on to finding the area of a circle. Now let's take a look at finding the area of a circle. Now the formula we use for the area of a circle is area equals pi r squared. So pi times the radius squared. So we do need to be familiar with both diameter and radius when we work with circles. Diameter is the distance all the way across a circle. So it's a line segment that connects 2 points on the circle, and it has to go through the center. And then the radius is half the diameter. So it goes from the center to any point on the circle. And then lastly, before we get into our example, is pi, which is the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. Pi is a constant, so it's the same for all circles. Now pi is irrational. It goes on forever. So we are going to use an approximate or rounded version of pi, 3.14. With that being said, let's jump into our example where we have a circle with a radius of 9 centimeters. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is write out the formula for the area of a circle. So area equals pi r squared. Then I'm going to plug in the radius. So area equals pi times the radius, which is 9 centimeters, squared. After that, let's do 9 squared, which means 9 times 9, not 9 times 2. That's a common mistake. So remember, 9 squared, when you square a number, that means multiply that number by itself. So 9 squared means 9 times 9, which is 81. So we end up with pi times 81. Now we can rewrite this as area equals 81 pi. One way to write the area of a circle is to write it in terms of pi, meaning we can write our number in front of the pi symbol and put our unit of measure, which is centimeters. And when working with area, it's going to be square units. So we have area equals 81 pi square centimeters. So again, one way to write our answer is in terms of pi. So we have our number and then our pi symbol followed by the unit of measure squared. Now another way we can do this is to use an approximate version of pi. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to use 3.14. So pi is approximately 3.14. So that squiggly equal sign there, that means an approximate value, unlike an equal sign, which means an exact value. So something to keep in mind when you see that. So let's go through our process here, and we're going to start by writing out our formula. So area equals pi r squared. Next, let's plug everything in. So we have area is approximately, and I'm using the approximately symbol since we are using an approximate version of pi. So 3.14 that we're using for pi times our radius of 9 centimeters squared. So 9 squared is going to give us, well, we have 3.14 and 9 squared equals 81. So we end up with 3.14 times 81. And that's going to give us an approximate area of 254 and 34 hundredths square centimeters. And again, that's an approximate area because we used an approximate version of pi. So that gave us an approximate area there in decimal form in comparison to this area over here, which we wrote in terms of pi. So there's how we calculate the area of a circle given the radius. Let's move on to finding the area given the diameter. For this example, we have a circle with a given diameter of 12 feet. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do is write out the formula for the area of a circle. So area equals pi r squared. Next, we can plug in our radius. So area equals pi times. Now we are given the diameter, so we need to divide that diameter by 2 to get the radius, because remember, the radius is half of the diameter. 12 divided by 2 gives us a radius of 6 feet. Let's plug that in, and that's going to give us 6 squared. Now 6 squared, that means 6 times 6, not 6 times 2. When we square a number, we multiply that number by itself. So let's do 6 squared, which gives us 6 times 6, which equals 36. So we end up with pi times 36. Now remember, just like in our first example, one way to write our area is to write it in terms of pi. And again, That means we can write our number in front of the pi symbol and then put our unit of measure. So we can put 36 pi, and this is square feet for our unit of measure. So that's one way we can write out our area of that circle. Another option, we can use an approximate rounded version of pi. Like I mentioned earlier, we're going to use 3.14. So we can use this to get an approximate area of this circle in decimal form. So again, we're going to use pi is approximately 3.14. Let's write out our formula, which is area equals pi r squared, and then we can plug in. So area is approximately, I'm going to use the approximate symbol there, because again, we're using an approximate version of pi, so we are going to get an approximate area. Let's plug in 3.14, and then multiply by our radius, which is 6 squared. And now we can calculate here. Let's do 6 squared. So 3.14 times 6 squared, which equals 36. And now let's multiply. So 3.14 times 36 gives us an approximate area of 113 4/100. And this is square feet. So that is an approximate area of that circle. So there you have it. There's how to find the area of rectangles, squares, triangles, and circles. I hope that helped. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, peace.